All right, now on to some well-known and well-studied genetic diseases that we're going to be talking about. They're pretty interesting because they're based on chromosomal mutations and DNA mutations, and also some chromosomal abnormalities. So, what causes genetic disorders? Like I said, some of them are caused by mutations of just the DNA sequence inside of the cell. And the reason it gets passed on is because it's in the gamete. And if it's just in you and it won't be passed on, then it's in the somatic cell of the body cell. They can also be caused by actual chromosomal mutations where sections are deleted, where sections are swapped between two different chromosomes where they're not supposed to be, when sections of chromosomes are accidentally inverted. And then also sometimes chromosomes are duplicated for no reason. And these are just issues that happen during DNA replication and also issues that happen during cell division. And then another genetic disorder is what happens during metaphase and anaphase, which is called non-disjunction or aneuploidy. And you've actually talked about this in one of your other Google worksheets before. And it's when you have too few or too many of one type of chromosome, because when they're being pulled apart, they either don't get pulled apart from the homologous pairs or the sister chromatids, or they're getting neglected and lack of pulling apart. So sometimes you will end up with an extra chromosome while the other cell that was supposed to have it is now missing a chromosome. So you can have monosomies, which is only having one when you're supposed to have two. You can have trisomies when you're supposed to have two and you have three. There's a bunch of different terms. And when you talk about other organisms, the number can be drastically different as well, because sometimes plants have 8 versions of the same chromosome, whereas humans only have 2. So a common one that you might have already heard about is sickle cell anemia. And it is an autosomal recessive. It's autosomal, which means that it's going to be on chromosome 1 through 22. And in fact, it is found on chromosome 11. It's caused by a mutation in the hemoglobin beta gene. So basically, red blood cells, when they have this mutation, they have poor oxygen transporting abilities because the hemoglobin's all messed up. And that's usually what attracts the oxygen in your blood. And it causes the shape of the cell to kind of crinkle into this sickle shape. As you can see, the normal is like a squished jelly donut, and the sickle shape looks like this. And it causes issues carrying oxygen around your body. So you have anemia and you're always tired and you have a hard time doing active things. And the other issue is that with this shape, instead of being smooth and bumping around and bouncing off of the walls of your veins and arteries, it can actually catch onto each other and cause blood clots in tissues and blood vessels, and actually cause really, really big issues. Another one is cystic fibrosis. So this is found in the lungs. Usually there is like thin, smooth muscle that works really well. And then there's a lot of space. And the mucous membrane is nice and healthy and thin and clear. But in cystic fibrosis, there's inflammation, and that causes the smooth muscle to kind of slowly stop working well over time because of the constant inflammation. Basically, it's always sick. And then the mucus is overloaded. The muscle can't push it out. You can't cough properly. You can't breathe properly. And it's an autosomal recessive disorder. And a lot of people actually die in early adulthood if they have cystic fibrosis, because it actually is really, really hard to live having this condition, and it only progressively gets worse. There's actually a new drug that actually came onto the market a couple years ago that actually works pretty well and has been pretty successful in helping people with cystic fibrosis be able to live longer and maintain a healthier lifestyle for longer. Not that this is something that I can really control. This too is an autosomal recessive, which means that it's not a dominant thing. Not a lot of people in the population have it, and it's found on chromosome number 7. It's caused by a mutation in the CFTR gene, which basically, like I said, causes the inability to remove overproduction of mucus in the lungs, and it causes constant inflammation and infection. So basically, your lungs become less and less good at their job because they're always sick. Marfan syndrome is another cool one to look at. It is an autosomal dominant genetic condition where the inheritance pattern is carried on chromosome number 15. Now, if it's dominant, there's no such thing as a carrier anymore, right? Because if you have even one, you have the condition. Okay, but the reason why it's dominant and it's not really, really common is because it just isn't common. If you have even one of the alleles, you have the condition, but it's not a very, very common allele to be found in our population as humans. And this mutation is linked to the FBN1 gene that codes for the protein fibrillin. And fibrillin is really important because it is in charge of basically producing the structure and the stability and the resilience in connective tissue like tendons and ligaments. Okay, so as you can see up here, there's a bunch of connective tissues and they're related to structure and movement. And those tissues are all weakened because the fibrillin production is different or too low because of this mutation. Hemophilia is a cool one to also talk about. I know it's technically blood related. Don't get it mixed up with sickle cell. The blood cells are normal shaped. It's actually related to the blood clotting abilities. So it is an X-linked recessive. So it's a sex-linked genetic condition. And the inheritance pattern basically means that moms can be carriers, but dads cannot, and that sons are often more likely to inherit this condition and show the condition because obviously they don't have the second X to kind of cover up if they got an X with the mutation. So it's caused by a mutation of the F8 gene that results in not enough blood clotting factors being produced to help close wounds in the body. And a cool fact about hemophilia is that it was extremely common, more so in that group of European royalty than compared to any other population in the world because of inbreeding. So all the royal families were trying to keep their bloodlines pure, and so they would have cousins marrying, they would be trading across other royal families, but if you trade a couple times, then everybody's cousins at that point. So basically having inbreeding results in uncovering a lot of recessives and a lot of people getting the recessives. And when boys get the recessive, they automatically show it. And so a lot of the times the young princes would pass away at a young age from hemophilia related injuries because they would not be able to clot their blood and heal from an injury after they kind of got even bruised or cut. Turner syndrome is for women only. It is caused by a non-disjunction or an aneuploidy or a deletion that results in monosomy X. So normally a girl has 2 X chromosomes. In the Turner syndrome, there's only 1. So basically whatever you have, and you're also missing a lot of the necessities of having 2 because when one has when one X has a chromosome has an allele in it that's a little weak or it doesn't produce properly for certain proteins, the other one usually has an allele that can cover for it. But if you only have 1, you just got to do with what you got. And so women with Turner syndrome tend to have short stature and they have fertility issues. And there's no inheritance pattern because this isn't something that's passed down from mother to daughter. It's something that just happens because of non-disjunction during mitosis or meiosis. Klinefelter syndrome is for men only. It is caused by a non-disjunction or an aneuploidy resulting in having 47 chromosomes because there's an extra X for the men because men usually have XY. So Klinefelter is XXY. So the men who have this usually have tall height, they have poor muscle tone, meaning they have a lot more fat and their muscles don't really grow very large and show very well. They usually have small testicles and are usually almost completely infertile, unable to have kids. And also 60% of babies that have Klinefelter syndrome that are found in the womb usually result in miscarriages to begin with. Again, like Turner syndrome, there's no inheritance pattern because a non-disjunction aneuploidy is usually caused by an issue that happens during cell division and not from recessive dominance alleles. And the last one we're going to talk about is Down syndrome. So Down syndrome is actually pretty common. People generally know about it, and it is caused by a non-disjunction or aneuploidy as well. It results in trisomy 21, which tri means 3, right? It means you have 3 chromosome 21s instead of the normal 2. And having this extra chromosome, you think, well, if you have an extra, it's not really a big deal. But actually, it causes a lot of issues where it causes complete stunted physical and mental development. And it can be environmentally affected too. So non-disjunction or aneuploidy is more likely to happen when you are older. So that's why doctors recommend that if you are going to have a baby after the age of being like 35 to 38-ish, it's usually you have to keep a watch out for Down syndrome because when you're older, your cells have gone through a lot more cell divisions and more mistakes are likely to happen. And again, like I said, there's no inheritance pattern because it's caused by a non-disjunction aneuploidy. It's just a mistake during cell division. So these are some of the really common genetic disorders that are found in our human population. And they're really cool to think about. And I kind of grouped them in having dominant recessive, whether it's sex-linked, whether it's aneuploidy in this video, just to kind of show that Some of them are kind of similar, some of them aren't really similar. Some of them affect similar things, but they're all kind of cool. And the only reason we were able to discover them is partially because of figuring out that DNA is genetic material of life. And then also because we have things like karyotyping and pedigrees to track what's happening in families.